Ranking every SMG in Warzone, from Modern Warfare to Vanguard. Welcome back, I'm Austin, and I'm going to be starting with the Cold War SMGs with the AK-74U, an underappreciated weapon that isn't used nearly enough and has a solid time to kill. The reason people don't love this is mainly because it has bad movement, but it's still a pretty good sub, and I'd put it in the viable tier. Now the LC-10, this thing for some reason people loved it at some point and thought it was meta. I always hated the LC-10, and it got nerfed, and now I'm just going to say it's garbage. I would never use this gun in my life. It's supposed to be a good ranged SMG, but it has a terrible time to kill, and there's subs that are just as accurate as it. Now moving to the MAC-10, I don't want to hear any hate for this one. I know it was meta forever, but it's only viable now. There's only one thing it does really well, and that's movement speed, so it's going to allow you to make some nice plays sliding around, but its time to kill is average, and you also have an open bolt delay making that TTK slower. The damage per mag is trash and doesn't have good range. The movement and decent time to kill is what makes it viable, but it certainly is not a meta weapon. Moving on to the KSP, I know I did just dog this LC-10 pretty badly, but I'd actually use it over the KSP-45. It's a burst SMG, slow time to kill, slow fire rate. I think we all know we're not using this thing. It's really bad. Let's go to the OTS-9. This thing was meta forever, but they did nerf it slightly going into Caldera, and I'm only going to throw it in the competitive tier instead of meta, and I'm going to tell you why. Obviously, the fire rate's good. TTK is still above average and pretty top tier, but they did nerf it a little bit, and it has really good mobility. It's really important to be able to use a sub out a little bit farther because you're going to get into more long-range engagements in all the open parts of the map. So it's still pretty good inside of cities and in buildings, but the damage per mag and the range and the recoil are going to make me knock it down into competitive instead of top tier meta. In time for the Milano, something I probably can't give enough justice in this video right here, but I don't normally compare it to other SMGs because it works better as a long-range AR, but for some reason, Cold War said, hey, we're going to categorize this thing as a sub, so that's why it's going to be in this video. It's top tier meta if you build it out to be a long-range weapon. I have a top 5 loadout video where I give an in-depth look at why this thing is so good. How is my best way to describe this quickly would probably be the pre-nerf Krig, but you have amazing mobility. That's pretty much how I would describe this Milano. For the PPSH, we're going to go with back-to-back meta weapons, and you're going to be wondering why that is when it has the same time to kill as the MAC-10 and basically the same mobility. And you're like, but the MAC-10's only viable? Well, the PPSH has amazing range and great damage per mag, so it takes what the MAC does well, doubles it because it's good in more areas. This thing you can use all over the map because it has a 17.5 meter range before the time to kill drops off, and then it still has a good TTK even after that drop off. This thing is just super versatile, and that's why it's so good. Now the Lapa is going to be in the same category as the PPSH as a top tier meta weapon. Now the reason people don't use this one as much is going to be because there's 3 different barrels and they make the gun perform completely differently, and 2 of them are completely trash. I'm going to be honest with you. So if you don't know which barrel to use, this weapon will not be good. This is also in the top 5 class loadout video that I mentioned with the Milano. It's really good. Trust me, you can use it all over the map. Good time to kill, really good mobility. The Cold War MP5 is going to go right next to the OTS because they're almost the same weapon with a couple caveats. They have the same time to kill and nearly identical fire rates. The only difference is the OTS is more mobile and the Cold War MP5 is going to have a bigger damage per mag. Pretty much, they're both going to be really good in cities and inside of buildings, but they're going to be really bad out in the open areas of the map. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this. Now the Bullfrog, probably the easiest SMG to use in the entire game, and I'm going to throw it in viable because it used to be a meta weapon, but then they nerfed its headshot damage and it got a little bit worse, but it has a huge damage per mag, has no recoil, anyone can use this, even if you're a bot. It has slightly below average time to kill. The benefit of the huge clip as well as the super easy to aim weapon is going to make it viable for anyone to use in the entire game. Now the nail gun, this is just going to go into niche. It has a pretty good TTK up close, but you can't put a single attachment on it. Terrible bullet velocity, not good movement. If you're within 5 meters of someone, this nail gun will drop them. It will be in the niche category. You could probably get away with this in solos. The Fennec is going to be another easy to use weapon because it has over 1,000 RPM, which makes it really forgiving, but the damage per mag is trash. I'm just going to throw it in viable, not much to say about it. The ISO, this is the only SMG I've actually never used in Warzone, so I have nothing to say about this thing. It's going to go to other, and you can let me know in the comments, is the ISO SMG good? I'm going to assume not because I haven't heard anyone talking about it. and I haven't seen anyone using it. The MP7, this is going straight into the competitive category. It has not been used nearly enough after Modern Warfare's life cycle. It has a great time to kill inside of 11 meters. It also has really low recoil and can still work out to 20-25 meters. The only reason I'm not putting it in meta is because the mobility is a little bit slow on it, and that's a problem with a lot of the Modern Warfare SMGs. And speaking of mobility sucking, that's going to be the AUG's biggest problem and why it is going to go inviable. If you put on the 5.56 NATO ammo, it's actually really good, amazing time to kill. I used to love this thing, but you're going to be moving around slower than if you were using an assault rifle, which is kind of insane to me. If the mobility wasn't so trash, you could knock this thing up a category, but the TTK is great. When you're shooting the weapon, it will feel fantastic. The Striker 45, I'm not even going to talk about this one, just know that is utter garbage. The Uzi is better than the Striker 45 and KSP, but it's still garbage. Honestly, I feel kind of bad about having the LC10 down here right now, because it's way better than these other three. I think I was overcritical of this thing just for my pure hatred of using it myself. It's got to be below average, because it's way better than these three things. The P90 is going to go up into viable. It's a solid weapon, has a pretty good sized clip, decent TTK, so it's a solid weapon. That's where it's going to go. The Modern Warfare MP5 is going to be in competitive as well. Amazing hip fire. It has a good time to kill. It's going to be kind of like the OTS and the other MP5, where it's going to be much better in cities and inside of buildings, and then struggle in the open sections of the map. So that's why I'll be competitive instead of top tier meta. The PP19 Bizon. Where do I even begin? This has got to be the worst SMG in the entire game. I'd rather use the KSP over this, and I can't believe I'm saying it. I remember I did a poll one time asking what the best LMG in Warzone was, and someone in the comments put the PP19 Bizon, and I thought they were trolling me. I'm like, this is about LMGs, not SMGs. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, but you can put on a 100-round clip. It's freaking amazing. I'm like, what? Some people are weird and do not use this weapon. It is awful. I can't even look at it anymore. The CX9. Honestly, I have not used in a while, but then I went up and looked up the stats, and I think it's competitive. It actually has good mobility, and it still has a pretty good time to kill, over 1,000 RPM. I gotta try using the CX9 again. We finished talking about the Cold War and Modern Warfare SMGs, so we're moving over to the Vanguard ones. The M1928, or the Tommy gun, is gonna go in viable because it's just an average SMG. Average fire rate, average time to kill, average damage per mag. So there's nothing special about it. It's viable right now. The Owen gun is gonna be competitive. It does have a slow fire rate, but you can fix it with a couple attachments such as the recoil booster or the 72 Gorenko mags. It's going to work the best if it's used as a sniper support because it can be really accurate, and it's going to be a lot better using it mid-range, and you also are going to have to beef up the mobility with its 10 attachments. Either way, this thing's going to be really competitive if you pair it with a Swiss or a car. The Type 100 was complete garbage when the game was first implemented into Warzone. It moved up to viable and almost competitive, and it's mainly due to a perk it has called Gung Ho, which eliminates all sprint to fire time. On every other SMG, it's going to be around 117 milliseconds, but when you put on the Gung Ho attachment on the Type 100, that goes to 0, meaning if you're running and the enemy's running, and you guys see each other at the same time, you're going to have a 117 millisecond advantage to start shooting them, which does help fix the TTK being a little bit lower. Now, the MP40 is the most used gun in the entire game, and I don't know when that's ever happened and the gun isn't top tier meta and completely overpowered. I don't really need to talk about this thing too much. Other than that, it's amazing. The Vanguard PPSH is going to go in the same category as the OTS and two MP5s, where it's really good up close but struggles at range. There is a build on this right now where the hipfire is completely busted, but since I can't use it effectively over half the map, I'm only going to be throwing it in the competitive tier. The Sten's going to have the same perk as the Type 100 up here of Gung Ho to eliminate sprint to fire time completely, and it also has really good hipfire spread and good mobility, but personally, I just don't like the weapon. When I've gone to use it, I haven't noticed it to be great. It doesn't have a lot of damage per mag as one of its cons, so I think it's viable, and I see the perks to using it. I just don't love it. I don't see the Welgun down on this list of weapons, so I'm just going to be calling the Magnum the Welgun, and let's just put it in top tier meta where it belongs. It's completely busted right now. It's only really good up close, but it has an absolutely busted time to kill. Think about what the OTS and Cold War MP5 used to do by getting sub 500 millisecond TTKs. The Welgun can do that. It's stupid. Don't know why it's happening. It's really good. And if you want to see every AR ranked, I'll have a video linked on screen right now, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.